Gracious God, may only your word be spoken and your word be heard. Amen. It wasn't supposed to be this way. Away from family and friends at a time when one would want to be close to them. Given confusing and perhaps even unwelcome directions from the government. After all the hard work and the sacrifices to come this far on the journey, only to have it look and feel like this? It wasn't supposed to be this way. And I have to think that amongst all of the chaos of emotions that would have filled that first Christmas, that somewhere in the mix, Mary was thinking that it wasn't supposed to be like this. A teenage girl giving birth to a baby of suspicious origin, far away from her mother or her extended family, or the friends that you would want to surround you at such a time. A census that makes not a lick of sense. I mean, wouldn't the government want to count people where they currently live as opposed to where their family was from? After traveling more than 90 miles from Nazareth to Bethlehem, possibly on foot because there's no scriptural reference to that donkey that's always in the pictures, only to arrive and discover that no one in town really wanted them there. I imagine that Mary stood at the entrance to the stable, looking around at the goats and the chickens as the first pains were coming upon her, and thought, it wasn't supposed to be like this. Then again, when the shepherds showed up telling stories of angels singing in the skies, she probably hadn't imagined that it was going to be like that either. We're told at the end of the traditional Christmas Eve reading that Mary pondered all these things in her heart. And with everything that had happened between the moment Gabriel first showed up and said, "Greetings, favored one," 9 months before, and this moment, staring at her baby in a manger with shepherds standing round. With all of that, Mary certainly did have plenty to ponder. When I hear the word ponder, I think of an English professor in a tweed jacket with elbow patches who is smoking a pipe and staring out a window, having deep thoughts. Pondering seems like a gentle word, one well suited to Mary, meek and mild. But the Greek word that is translated here as ponder is sumbalo, which comes from the root balo, which means to throw, and sum, meaning with. Sumbalo, things are thrown to be with each other in some way. So one definition of sumbalo is that you are bringing things together in your mind. You ponder them. But another definition of sumbalo, one that is more closely related to the root of the word, is the idea of different things being thrown together. Different things thrown together like glorious angels and ragamuffin shepherds, like food for cattle and a human infant in the same trough, like heaven coming down and meeting earth, not where you might expect it to happen, in the center of power in Rome, but out here in the obscure and unexpected places. Yes, this is a story about many different things being thrown together with all of the chaos and disorder and haste that we associate with that phrase. But as it turns out, chaos and disorder is where God does God's best and most creative work. All the way back, at the very beginning of the book of Genesis, we are told that everything was a formless void with darkness covering the deep. It is a chaotic and mysterious scene, and then God speaks. Let there be light. And there is. And it is that same light, the light that began all of creation, that the prophet Isaiah speaks of when he tells us that the people who have walked in darkness have seen a great light. And it is the same light that John the Evangelist speaks of in the traditional Christmas morning reading when he reminds us that the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not overcome it. The light of the Christmas story is the same light that began all things. And in the story of creation, we are told that God separates the light from the darkness, separates the sky from the waters, separates the earth from the sea. God's fundamental creative act is bringing order out of chaos, taking things which seem thrown together and making sense out of all of it. Drawing order out of chaos, that is how God first broke into our world. And in the Christmas story, amidst the messiness, noise, and disorder of a stable, God breaks into our world in a new way, again, in the form of a baby who will grow into a man who will teach us how to reorder the whole world. And that is what I'm feeling called to remember on this particular Christmas. That when things are at their most confusing, and when we don't know what is coming next, when things are at their most unsettled and most unsettling, when it feels like there is so much turmoil and disruption, that is when God shows up to do God's best work. That is when God sends messengers to assure us with words like, "Do not be afraid. I bring you good news. There will be great joy for all people." And we are called to be like Mary, to ponder all of these seemingly disparate things in our hearts, to hold the tension between the vision that God casts for our world and the realities that we see when we look around. We are called to sumbalo, to bring these things together in our minds, to both know ourselves to be a people who have walked in great darkness, and to trust that we are a people who have seen a great light, a light that the darkness did not and will not overcome. It wasn't supposed to be this way. Another variant, another surge, another COVID Christmas. But living in the tension between the world as it is and the world as God created it to be is exactly where the followers of Jesus belong. Knowing that Jesus came here and walked among us and lived in the tension between man and God himself. Living in this messy, chaotic world as one of us. That is what we remember at Christmas. The love of a God who wanted to be among us, who became flesh and dwelt among us. It wasn't supposed to be this way. But this Christmas, let us ponder. Let us bring together in our minds the honest truth of the challenges that we face and the hope as fresh as a newborn baby, the hope of a God who shows up in obscure and unexpected places, who draws order out of chaos, and who created us all out of love. Amen.